You're listening to the Lawyers with Purpose Practice Success Podcast, hosted by Lisa Rozier, featuring attorney Dave Zampano, along with frequent guests. Whether you're a seasoned estate planning attorney, an attorney looking to add estate planning and elder law to your existing list of practice areas, or you're just starting out, this podcast will give you a solid plan for success. Listen now as Dave and his guests share their personal journeys to practice success and the insights they learned along the way.
Welcome back, everyone, to yet another episode of the Lawyers with Purpose Practice Success Podcast. Again, always trying to introduce you to other entrepreneurial attorneys who struggled but figured it out and are still on the journey of getting to the next step of their professional success. And today we're excited to have Pam Baker, Esquire, with us. Welcome, Pam.
Thank you, Dave. Glad to be here.
So, Pam, if you would just share, where your practice is and just kind of maybe share with the audience your background, how you got to where you are today.
Sure. So I became an attorney 5 years ago. Right out of the gate, out of law school, I opened my own practice, which is a little bit non-traditional route for most people. But I had been around law firms and worked for them through law school and then prior to that. So I felt pretty confident doing that. But over time, during the first couple of years, I felt that clients would come in and I didn't have all of the confidence that I wanted to have because I didn't have a senior attorney or a partner. I had some mentors, but they were busy and, I didn't want to take advantage
you didn't have
of them.
the big, fat, gray-haired guy in the corner. That's what I used to say, right?
Yes. And then I would kept having clients coming in with, I've got $1 million, but I'm afraid I'm going to run out of money. Can you help me? And at that time in my career, I did not have a solution for them. I didn't have a good answer. I felt I couldn't help them. So I decided in about my third year of practice to go ahead and look for a software for two reasons. One, I wanted to help these people. And two, I wanted something that was continually up to date, that was easier, that made my practice smoother so that I wasn't spending so much time drafting and generating documents, for every individual client.
So that's what I call outsourcing the trust building and maintaining with all the changes and all that stuff.
Right. Exactly. Just, being on my own, and I didn't have anybody that worked for me at the time. It was a lot.
Employees. Okay. Yeah.
No
I would
employees.
say. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I actually joined LWP and hired my first employee at the same time. So it was a big year that year with learning curve wise. I had so much to learn and I had to train somebody else. So she kind of onboarded with me.
What are
LWP.
the key things that you learned during? I just want to pause here because there's a lot of things you said I want to grab, but that's obviously the most recent one. You decided to go and join an organization that does all this other stuff, but at the same time, you hired your first employee. How long ago was that?
That was a year and a half ago, almost 2 years now.
So think about this. So a year and a half ago, you went from being a solo with no staff to joining a crazy organization never heard of with a staff member. What are some of the things now that you have hindsight, you look back on? What are some of the takeaways you might be able to share, for someone else? I'm sure there's a lot of attorneys that struggle. They're working by themselves. They're working long hours, trying to get everything done. Like you said, how do I maintain the trust? How do I answer that question? What do I do with $1 million?
Yep.
What are some of the hindsight things you would share?
In hindsight, I would have hired her and joined a lot sooner, but it was great having somebody to help me. And every person that I've ever hired has just made me more productive and they pay for themselves because I can do more high level things that I need to do to grow the business, to make it the client experience as good as it can be. One thing that lawyers always get a bad rap is they're, not available, right? And their lack of response time and things take too long. So I've really, since I've started, tried to pride myself on great customer service, which has really grown my practice. So having her at the same time as I started LWP was invaluable because there is no way that I could have taken all of that on and provided good customer service and learned all the new nuances of Medicaid, without having some help.
I have saying, I've been fortunate for 30 years now. I've been doing this, but I've been coaching other lawyers for 22. And one of the things that I find is that one of the hardest things for us as lawyers that I've found is for us to stay in our lane, what I call your who-ness. What is it that you do really well? And what do you not do really well? So I think of those things sitting on the corner of your desk, right?
Mhm.
And they just keep sitting there. Why is that? Because it's just not your thing, right? So what if you had someone else in the office that was their thing? Then that
Right.
thing that's a burden for you and you got to pass by it every day. Like you said, you did this together with someone, and whatever, they took the stuff, they said, look, I'll do all those, you do all these. And now you're all working in your who-ness, what I call your strategic coach would call it your unique ability, right? So, and when we work on our unique ability, we're more productive, we're more effective, and we're more efficient, right?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
And I want to just trigger on a couple other things you said, and then I want to get back to some of the challenges over the last year and a half and where you are now with those. But I'm understanding that when you went to law school 5 years ago, you came out, law school was not your first career. It sounded like you said, well, I had worked with lawyers before. So tell me a little more about, so law school was a second career for you?
Yeah. So I actually had, I've been married twice. So it was my first husband that I was married to at the time. He is an attorney. And so I helped him during our marriage. I started our practice. I did the HR, hiring, accounting,
Wow.
billing. I did all the behind the scenes, different type of law practice. They did a little bit of estate planning, but not much. But I was very familiar with it. And then when I got divorced, I had 2 kids, and I live in Naples, Florida, and the career options here were not necessarily in line with my undergrad, which is chemical engineering. So I said, I have experience with law firms. I'm going to law school at 34 years old, whatever I was at the time. And I went back to law school. I graduated in 2.5 years, took the bar, passed the bar. And I said, I'm going to work for myself so I can have time with my family.
So that's what we would call the entrepreneurial seizure. If you read The E-Myth by Michael Gerber, that's a Bible we send out to every member once they join, right?
Yep.
Right. You had that entrepreneurial seizure where you say, I can go do this myself, but you were kind of unique because you started on your own, which I think is, very scary for a lot of attorneys. Right. But you hobbled along for a few years.
Right. It is very scary, but I had with my ex-husband, he had his own firm. So I'd been around it. I knew how it worked, and I knew I just needed to get clients. And at the time I joined a networking group. It's called BNI. Business Network International. And that helped me tremendously to get confidence, to get some clients in the door. And, that's why I started with no staff, right? I had a very low overhead. And fortunately, where I went to law school in Naples, Ave Maria, they had a panel of graduates that came in and spoke to us. And there was about 3 people on that panel that did what I'm doing on their own. They said, I just, in law school, I interned, which is what I did. I interned at a couple different estate planning firms. And then they went on their own and they told us how they did it. And I thought, you know what? Why can't I do that? There's no reason I couldn't just jump right in. So that's what I did.
And how did you know you wanted to do estate planning? Had you always done estate planning over the 5 years when you were out?
No, actually, no. I started out thinking I would do patent and trademark law. So I actually have my patent bar license as well. I took the patent bar when I was in law school, and I worked for a company doing that. But when I started to do it more, I didn't enjoy it as much, and it was much harder to have to be on your own. So I knew I eventually wanted to be on my own, and that required, patent and trademark work requires a whole team of people with specialties and all of that.
Yeah, a lot of process work too,
Yeah, exactly. And it was a lot of just reading, writing, research. And in this case, I like meeting with people. I like talking to people, learning their stories, getting to know them. And so the estate planning just really fit in with what I enjoyed so much better than the other stuff. So I went to law school having no clue what I was going to do. And I actually thought estate planning would not be an option for me because there's so many attorneys in Naples that do that. So I thought there's no way I'm going to be able to cut into that market share.
But this is huge, right? So, and so what happened? Were you able to?
The opposite happened because so many people, the reason there's so many attorneys that do it here is because there's such a high need for it. We have a lot of out-of-state people that move to Florida, and our laws are are very specific with homestead and some other things. So they always want to meet an attorney here and get their stuff reviewed, updated, and all that. And then a lot of the existing attorneys are getting ready to retire. So people come down here and they say, I want to make sure you're around when, when I die.
Right. They want to make sure the person there. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
So high need, again, we don't have the problem in New York that you have in Florida with new people coming in. It's all the people leaving here and going down to where you are, I think.
For sure.
But one of the things I would say is that, so this journey a year and a half ago that you started where you adopted systems and processes and you went down with your first hire and you both, this other person, what's their role in your firm?
So she started out as kind of my do-it-all person. She was answering the phones. She was scheduling was a big deal for me, keeping that organized. When we started with LWP, we did some coaching and we got the time template in place, which was a huge change for my.
Yeah, I agree. Changed my life back when I invented it. But yeah,
I mean, I tell my attorney friends that are super busy all the time, I'm like, you have to have that. Like, you're going to go crazy if you don't, because that's how I was. I would have like one meeting Monday and then like morning and afternoon, like on Tuesday. And my day was just so jumbled up. But now one of my goals with it is to have more time with my kids. And so that really helped, to set that time aside. And so the girl that started with me has since transitioned into a marketing and client services coordinator role. So she really likes marketing. And we just hired somebody else that does our drafting and funding. So I've got,
and what I love is I love your names, client service credit, all part of the system in the process, right? Knowing when to hire your next hire, where to hire. And I also love that the person started out as your everything person and then found their niche, what we would call your who-ness, right? So what they're really good at naturally. So when you put 1 and 1 together, you get 11 when you do it right. So that's the key thing, right? Everybody stay in their lane. You do what you're really good at, which sounds like you're really good at relationships. You like going out there, shaking trees, what I say, kissing babies and shaking hands. And that BNI, speaking, showing value to clients. And then you have your team there to make you look good. Like you make the promises and they make them happen. Kind of thing.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's been great to have the team, have her around me. And when I hired her, that was kind of like the thing. I'm like, I know that you're called the client services coordinator, but your job description entails much more than that. But she knew that as I grew, I would hire someone and she could go into whichever area she liked the best. Like she was first in. So that was kind of nice for her to get to see all different aspects of it and then kind of choose where she wanted to go.
She got to see all the roles that are presented under the model. And then she says, you know what, the next hire should be here because that's my least favorite and your least favorite. So if we get somebody really strong in that seat, then which was you said is drafting and
funding.
And funding. Oh yeah, those two animals, right? Two totally different skill set than the client service coordinator and marketing. So I love that marketing client service. That's a nice niche. But again, as you evolve, you continue to fill out the organizational chart that's provided and you build into it and grow in it. It's kind of wow. As you think back, what are some of the, again, as we wrap up, or holy moly, time's flying. As we wrap up, what are some of the things, someone listening, what are some of the challenges you had but you remember specifically difficult, but overcoming when you overcame them and you look back, you got a totally different perspective on what the underlying challenge was to begin with?
I think one of my challenges, well, the biggest one was the time challenge, right? And getting, having more time for myself, right? And then delegating to Catherine and now to the new person. And what really helped were those job descriptions and aligning, here's what you're doing, here's what you're doing, and we also meet weekly. So that was something I kept putting off, like, oh, well, I'm too busy for that. Let's just, skip it this week. But what I realized is that now that we do it, it makes everyone so much more productive for the week because we can get on the same page with everything, who's doing what, and they get, an hour of my time or an hour and a half, however long it takes to ask what they need to ask rather than having little mini things throughout the week. So sometimes I'll say,
so
listen,
it kind of releases the dam. It eliminates the bottleneck, if you will.
Right.
All can connect and all get in sync on client matters and legal matters, so everybody, so that none of the balls fall.
Exactly.
all the
That's
balls stay in
right.
the air.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So the time template was a great insight for you. Any other tool that stands out in your mind? You said, well, the job descriptions, all that, the accountability chart or organizational chart.
Right.
As you bring this new person on, what are your thoughts upon where you are now and where you want to be in the future?
So she, with her on board, now that we have three of us, it's really important to communicate between the three of us who's doing what. So we've added the gold sheet, the client status sheet to all the files so that anyone can, and we keep action step up to date so that anyone could look at it at any point in time and say, when was the last communication with the client? What do we need to do? Where are we at? So we're not constantly like, I can't remember. Like that's another big thing. It's just putting it all in the same place where we can all get to it.
System dependent, not person dependent. So
right.
Rely on the system. You got to do it anyway. So why not document it in a place where everybody else can see it?
Right. And then the next thing that we're doing is I put out an ad for another attorney. I'd like to hire an attorney to help alleviate some of the meeting, like to say roadblocks. So I only have so much time during the week and I don't want to take any more time away from my family. So I figured if I could hire another attorney, train them that they could handle some of the meetings, the design, perhaps the signing, and I could do initial vision and workshops. So that's
all this in a year and a half.
goal.
You're ready to hire another lawyer. Look at this in the year. Well, that's great to hear, Pam. So proud of you and
Thank you.
So happy to be part of your success and your ongoing success. It's so exciting. Any final thoughts to a listener that you would share?
I would just say, believe in yourself and believe in the process. And, you could, I feel like you could do anything. I feel like I'm going to just keep growing from here. And it's really, to me, important to just remember the client services, their impression of you and your firm would be the key to growing your business, because everything that I've done is through referrals. I don't do advertising or anything like that. And my business grows at least 50% a year over year since I've started. So, just
is that from
all about the client.
The referral management system? Do you use that?
Not a little bit,
version.
but not too much. Yeah. I don't use the process that I have BNI. So I've started kind of
you
with
used the
that.
BNI relationship. Yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah,
cool.
Exactly.
Well, like I said, doing what works. Well, Pam, thank you so much for listeners out there. This is yet one more successful story. If you have a successful story you'd like to bring to us, you can go to lawyerswithpurpose.com and submit your request, and we'll be happy to interview as well. But thank you, Pam. Continued success.
All right. Thanks so much, Dave. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Practice Success Podcast. Visit www.lawyerswithpurpose.com/podcast to listen to other episodes and to subscribe. We'll see you next time.